Hi, it's Steve Hargadon, and welcome to our second keynote of the Library 2.014 conference. This is our fourth year of holding this terrific conference, over 100 sessions this year. Had a terrific pre-conference day, Connected Librarian Day yesterday, that all of the recordings of that event are up, and that was so much fun. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks to Samantha Adams Becker for being here. Hi, Sam.
Hi, so happy to be here. Thank you, Steve.
Yes, thanks. Really excited to hear about your Horizon Library Report and the huge response you've gotten. Thanks to the School of Information at San Jose State University, a founding co-sponsor of the conference, and Dr. Sandra Hirsch, the director there, is the conference co-chair. Thanks to CISL, new this year. Our good friends at Rutgers are now a formal, significant sponsor of the event. Thanks to Follett and Library Journal. And thanks to Blackboard Collaborate for this terrific and oh-so stable platform. This is a Learning Revolution project. Thanks to Larry Wilson, Counting Options, and Wilma as well. Okay, those of you who are participating live, this is your chance to indicate where you are at this moment. Click on the star to the left of the map, and then click on the map. Maybe put a shout out in the chat. Oh, look, you've got New Zealand, Canada, somewhere in the Caribbean, or lots of fun. Puerto Rico. Nice. Keep those notes going in the chat. We sure hope that you have fun connecting with others at the conference. It's a large part of why we think this is so much fun. I'm going to move us forward from the actual map. And Sam, turn things over to you.
Thank you so much, Steve. And I want to personally thank the Learning Revolution and San Jose State University for inviting me to speak at this event, and of course all the wonderful sponsors. It's been a great honor to be invited and to get to work with all of them. So thank you so much. So today's presentation is about the NMC Horizon Report 2014 Library Edition, which you may have heard Steve allude to at the beginning, has received quite the attention. Now it's well over 1 million downloads since its release in August 2014. So while it is a 70-plus page Word document translated into PDF, we're going to do our best to scratch the surface with some great topics and project examples today. But I highly recommend, for more information, that you download the report. It's published under a Creative Commons license, so it's open and completely free to download at the link you see there on your screen. So thanks for joining me today to tackle some of the pressing technologies, trends, and challenges that academic libraries and academic and research libraries face today, and will be continuing to face tomorrow. Oh. So I'm looking to, there we go. There's just a delay in advancing the slides. So I realized that there is a Twitter handle. Oops, pardon me. Just a little bit of a delay with the slides there. I realize that there is a Twitter hashtag that you're following for the library event, but we also have our own, and that's hashtag NMCHC. And I encourage you to follow along with that hashtag, add that hashtag to any Twitter back channel conversations you're having. We're constantly monitoring that. So if you want to respond to something I've said that you agree with, disagree with, comment on the funny faces I'll inevitably be making, that's how to do it. So where I'm coming from, I'm with the New Media Consortium, and just a brief background to give you some context. We are an international community of learning-focused institutions, all with one mission, and that's to explore the use and the creative use of emerging technologies and new media for teaching, learning, research, and information management. So our members are universities, schools, research centers, and of course museums and libraries across the world, all with the same goal. And as part of our work, or a big part of our work, we conduct research and analyses in learning sectors, including libraries, to educate people on what emerging technologies, trends, and challenges that they should be watching out for. And I'm just going to, for a moment here, shut off my video. I'm noticing a little bit of a delay, and I don't want to distract with my horrible static face from the material.
Are you having trouble with the slides?
Yes, I am. They're not advancing. They're advancing about 10 seconds after I click them.
Try using the drop-down.
Okay, you got it. Perfect. Thank you, Steve. Great alternative. So for those of you who have heard about the Horizon Project or haven't heard about the Horizon Project, we've now conducted 45 of these studies in different learning sectors and regions of the world for the past 12 years. And I'm pleased to say that we have over 55 translations into Spanish, Portuguese, German, Japanese, Chinese, Catalan, and a number of other languages. And as Steve mentioned, there's been over 1 million downloads, and this is just a world map of the last 10,000 downloads, so you can see that the work is truly global in scope and reach. Oh, now I got a frozen menu for the slides. There we go. All right, I really can't move forward without giving praise where the praise is due, and the research behind this report and analysis was made possible by several libraries and organizations. It was jointly published by the University of Applied Sciences, the TIB Hanover, ETH Bibliothek Zurich, and we really appreciate their strong and critical participation. And so while the slides are loading, oh, there we go. Just to let you know that it's not the NMC staff who necessarily talks about the or decides the topics that you're going to see here today. For every edition of the Horizon Report, and the library edition is no exception, we convene a panel of experts to discuss prompts that we put up for them in a collaborative workspace, a wiki space, an example that you see here. And for about a month and a half of intense discourse, they talk about the trends that they're noticing, the challenges that they're facing, and ultimately we put all the topics that they discuss into a voting tool, and they end up deciding which technologies, trends, and challenges make each edition of the report. So I have to acknowledge the great work done by our expert panel, which this year consisted of 47 experts in libraries and technology across 16 different countries and 5 continents. So if there are any expert panelists in the audience here today, a tremendous thank you. So before I get into things, I kind of want to just for a minute here give you 15 seconds of silence to ponder the questions that you see here on this slide. These are the questions I want you to think about and keep in the back of your mind throughout the presentation. You might not have an immediate answer, but we'll be delving into topics and project examples that explore ways to solve challenges, implement different trends. So there will hopefully be a few topics we discuss that resonate with you and give you some ideas for developing a new strategy of implementation or a plan of action for solving a challenge. So let's just take 15 seconds here just to get in a good mindset and ponder these questions. All right, well, as someone mentioned in the chat, these are questions that cannot be found through a simple Google search. But I will be talking to you about some successful projects and studies today to hopefully help inspire these strategies so that you can see often that you don't need to start from scratch. Someone else out there may already be doing what you'd like to do. But again, I'm just scratching the surface today, and I hope you'll check out the report for more examples. And I really hope by asking you more questions in this presentation that I'll help incite some discussions that you can take back with you to your libraries and organizations. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today are trends that we're seeing in academic and research libraries. And to give you a little bit of context, we look at trends from a time scale. We have fast trends, and then we have slow trends. And the slow doesn't necessarily mean that the trends are 5 years off into the distance and not touching us yet. It may mean that these trends are already here, but they're moving slow like molasses. They're going to take a really long time to materialize into something bigger that impacts a larger amount of libraries. Another dimension of the work that we're looking at is we always look at every trend through the lens of policy, leadership, and practice. These are sort of the three prongs we think are necessary to be able to accelerate these trends. A trend's not just going to happen because people are doing innovative things around it. There has to be visionary leadership to come up with new ideas and policies in place to help govern and make mandates out of these trends. So it's a matter of dreaming up the ideas, and then it's a matter of doing them. I'm sorry again, just having a little bit of an issue with the drop down in the slides. So my apologies. Okay, so this is the grand list of trends for the 2014 report. We're going to talk about one from each section, from each time to adoption horizon, but here's the full list. And what I love is a lot of these images are actually from projects that are taking place at universities and libraries. So I believe this image is from University of Michigan's 3D printing. So the first trend that we're going to talk about today is the prioritization of mobile content and delivery, which our expert panel believes is 1 to 2 years off from accelerating very, very quickly. And from chatting with library professionals, I know this is a trend that's already impacting you in many ways. For example, a Pew Research Center study of American adults has reported that 42% of American adults own tablet computers, 55% own a smartphone, and 50% have dedicated handheld device. That is over half the adult population. So with this shift to mobile content consumption, people are expecting to be able to engage with library content from any device that they're using at any given time. There's a sentiment that they don't feel like they need to physically step foot in the library to be able to access these resources. And so what we're seeing is to adapt to this growing demand, libraries are integrating more mobile options for content, including more mobile-friendly websites that display and render well on phones using HTML5 and a number of other ways. They're also using apps, e-catalogs, and e-books. And some libraries are even furthering this trend by noting that some people, the other 50%, may not have access to these mobile devices. So for the past several years, there's definitely been lending programs developed to lend out tablets and e-readers to patrons. So the prioritization of mobile content and delivery is reflected in many practice examples, but I really want to highlight work that's being done at Duke University in their library. So what they're doing there is they're using an app for tablets that's called Browsing. And what this does is it makes the library resources more mobile friendly and enables their patrons to browse, read, and monitor the most up-to-date and current academic journals through this app. So the question I have for you is, how can you prepare for a rapidly evolving landscape of mobile devices if new ones are coming out all the time? One of the strategies to be thinking about is how to make whatever you're doing with your mobile strategy device agnostic. A very daunting task indeed. Well said, Peggy. And so a little further off, we're moving a little bit slower in the distance, is a trend about the evolving nature of the scholarly record, which is a mouthful in of itself. So what that basically means is that scholarly records were once limited to print-based journals and monographic series, and what scholarly communications used to be now can reside in networked environments that could be accessed from any array of publishing platforms. So the internet has really disrupted the traditional system of how we publish and how we communicate, and it's no longer just acceptable or desired for there to be, printing records and archiving in sort of traditional ways, scholarly records and scientific discoveries and research. So beyond discussions about new forms of scholarly records, there's also a focus on how publishing outlets can have given rise to more dynamic models of scholarship. So I recommend a report called Why Do We Still Have Journals, where a social science researcher highlights the opportunities offered by information technology and how they can be used in libraries. I also want to shine a light on an example of what a university library is doing very well, and that's over at the University of California, Davis. So they launched a project called Innovation in Scholarly Communication, and in that project, what they're trying to do is identify the changes that are impacting traditional modes of publication and really unpacking the meaning of the term publication in the digital age. So this is funded by the UCD Interdisciplinary Frontiers in the Humanities and Arts program, and they're tackling three key issues, which is finding new models of scholarly communication, new misconduct, and new opportunities in communication with data. And so to them, and what we need to look at is it's about constantly defining and refining what scholarly communications and records are and what they can be. So thinking about what new media can be incorporated into a record about a scientific discovery or study. What types of raw data that were never previously included can be included. And for example, we noticed that whenever an article is published or a report is published, there is social media buzz around it. So how can components like tweets, Facebook posts, and blogs be monitored and recorded continuously as a part of that archive and as a part of that scholarly record? Food for thought. The next trend that we're going to talk about is one that our expert panel decided was happening a little bit slower, and that's the rise of new forms of multidisciplinary research. And just to give you some context, because I've noticed that this topic means different things to different people, the way we look at this trend is the same way that the Melbourne Sustainable Society Institute defines it, which is multidisciplinary research refers to a concurrent exploration and activities in what seems like disparate fields. So this can mean digital humanities and computational social science work coming together in the hopes of finding each field, each discovery in each field helping and supporting another. So this can be really seen actually as just a broader example. We're seeing this trend materialize in major way in global society out there beyond libraries. So a good example would be in architecture. So not only do architects need to think about building and having their structures be usable for people and fit in with the urban environment, but they also need to be thinking about and have a sense of sustainable engineering principles. How can the building that they create be environmentally friendly? So architects are working with environmental engineers and back and forth to create something, to create a final product that is better than any one of those fields could have come up with themselves. So libraries have a real opportunity to capitalize on this, because often promoting this type of multidisciplinary research and this type of collaboration just requires a formal space and the formalization of activities and events, and that's what can make all the difference. So I'd like to showcase the work being done at the University of Notre Dame. They launched the Multidisciplinary Research Committee, which developed projects and events such as promoting multidisciplinary research, creating interactive spaces, in order to share best practices throughout the campus. So they created buildings, multidisciplinary research buildings, that are in addition to their Hesburgh libraries. And these are fully equipped spaces for the sole purpose of fostering collaboration between students and faculty from all different disciplines. And I realize it may be very expensive and not feasible to create formal spaces. So in lieu of being able to erect a new building, thinking about programs and events that can be developed where representatives from different disciplines are invited to create some sort of agenda or manifesto or initiative together. And just to switch gears a little bit, now that we've really talked about 3 pressing challenges, we can't really talk about how we could accelerate and progress these exciting ideas without looking at the other side of the coin. So for every compelling idea, of course, there's a challenge. Wah, wah. This is always the case. And so our expert panel looked at challenges from a couple different dimensions. We looked at challenges that are solvable versus challenges that are wicked. And we really defined solvable challenges as challenges that we've already defined, we have common language to describe them, and in many ways there's already policies in place to help solve them, and it's just a matter of implementing them at scale. Then we have difficult challenges. These are challenges that we are still working to define and develop common language around. We have a sense of what the challenge is. We know what it's going to take to solve them. It's just a matter of putting good policies in place and having the appropriate staff allocated. And finally, we have my favorite and my least favorite in so many ways, and those are wicked challenges. Wicked challenges were really hard for me and the team to write about because we define those as nearly impossible to explain, let alone solve. So we had the fun task of trying to define those unexplainable challenges, which was a lot of fun. And again, we of course looked at all these challenges through our same lens of policy, leadership, and practice to figure out what policies could be put in place to move these the solutions along, what kind of visionary leadership is required, and what's needed from librarians, library professionals to actually implement solutions. And so the first challenge that we're going to talk about today from this list is rethinking the roles and skills of librarians. But as you can see on the slide, we talk about 6 different challenges. Yes, the term radical does scare people, but we believe that sometimes these topics can be a little scary, and sometimes the fear and the reaction to those, whether negative or positive, can incite some really good discussions. But that's a great point. So this list represents all the challenges that made it into the report. Again, we're just going to be focusing on 3 from each section. So we're going to talk about a solvable challenge, a difficult challenge, and a wicked challenge. And before I delve into them, I just want to let you know that even though we're able to describe these challenges, it doesn't mean that we're as NMC and as the expert panel already able to solve them. I think part of moving forward with the solution is being able to identify a common definition of a challenge. Because if we all can understand a challenge the same way, even if we have different perspectives, it will help us in the formulation of solutions that can be implemented at scale between different libraries. So when we talk about rethinking the roles and skills of librarians, that one may seem a little scary too. I know we have lots of librarians and library professionals in the audience, and you may feel that your role has already changed drastically in the last few years as new needs have arisen. So as more universities are incorporating new technologies into teaching and learning there really is more of a demand for technological and instructional support for faculty and students from libraries who are uniquely situated to meet these needs. So these expectations are really causing libraries to rearrange their organizations, which is really prompting the creation of new departments, new positions, and altogether new responsibilities. So one report that's out there is a seminal analysis of ARL staffing. This was done in the United States and Canada, and 113 universities were surveyed, and what was found that more than half of the advertised positions at libraries were for newly created or significantly redefined roles. So while these new roles are being created in traditional library areas, we're seeing a clear hiring trend that emphasizes finding more functional specialists like data and metadata scientists that have a strong digital or technology background, because libraries are now being approached from many departments in different directions, and they're being expected to fill new and more specialized capacities. So the challenge here is really remaining nimble enough as these needs arise to constantly be redefining what roles and what skill sets are needed. And a good example of how one library and institution is tackling that is basically, it's happening at the Harvard Law School Library. So they've collaborated with the Berkman Center for Internet and Society in the development of a brand new academic technology project manager position. This position is based in their teaching and learning curriculum team at the library, but they're really serving as a liaison in many ways between the university and the library. The new role is entirely focused on providing support for their innovative suite of open source and online classroom tools. The suite is called H2O, but I know other universities are working with other open educational resources and have their own systems. But with this role, they're tasked with remaining in constant contact with faculty and students about developments in these digital learning tools, and also to go back to the library and communicate faculty and student needs to make sure the library services remain cutting edge and provide more opportunities for innovation and more opportunities for information discovery. The next challenge I'm going to be talking about was categorized by the expert panel as a difficult one. And I personally believe it might even be more than difficult because this is not going to be slowing down anytime soon. So before the rise of the internet, libraries were perceived as the gateways to knowledge. But now we have Google, we have Yahoo, or if you're my parents, you're still somehow using an old copy of Ask Jeeves. Don't ask me how or why. But how can libraries continue to be seen as gateways of knowledge and discovery? And this one is not just about strengthening library reputations by making your offerings more visible and more robust, but it's really also about making sure the sources people are checking out on the internet are accurate. Libraries do feel and have a sense of, or social sense of responsibility to help ensure the information and research floating out there is good information and is accurate. And so we're noticing more libraries partnering with Google Scholar and with Wikipedia and outlets where people are getting their information to ensure better quality. One example I'd like to share about is the OCLC research team. They launched the Wikipedia Library project, which is still in pilot mode. And what they're trying to do is make sources for citations more accessible to Wikipedia editors. So we've all been in a Wikipedia page and thought to ourselves, is that really true? That seems outdated, or I'm sure there's a better resource out there. And the answer to all those questions might be yes. So OCLC is working to make better citations and resources available for Wikipedia editors because the use of Wikipedia is not slowing down. So the best thing we can do is work with Wikipedia and those types of platforms rather than working against or ignoring them. So we have colleges like Dartmouth, in libraries like the Dartmouth College Library, Leiden University Library, University of Manitoba Libraries, who have partnered with Google Scholar to make all of their resources fully searchable, have full text search support. The final challenge that we're going to talk about today is deemed as a wicked challenge. And there was already some discussion in the chat here about the word radical. And this challenge is all about embracing the need for a radical change, which is a very wicked challenge. Radical change often takes time to happen. It takes a lot of consensus. There's a lot that goes into fostering drastic organizational and infrastructure changes at libraries. For a long time now, academic and research libraries have been facing leadership issues that really impact every aspect of their facilities, every impact of their offerings, their activities. It includes, but is definitely not limited to, updating their staffing models and addressing the elephant in the room, which is, in many cases, a lack of financial resources to keep up with technology changes and to actually make these changes happen. So with adding to this challenge is what we've talked about for a lot of this presentation, which is the need to adapt to rapidly evolving landscape of technology and to continue to find ways to better understand patron behaviors and needs and how they're wanting to engage with libraries. Staying ahead of the curve anticipating those needs, and then meeting them. So this change in focus on integrating more innovations is really at odds with traditional modes and policies that govern research and academic libraries. So there are changes that need to be made from the top down, from deans and directors to librarians, support staff, and new hires, and this is a really daunting task. Luckily, we were able to find some good examples of libraries that were finding their own unique ways to tackle changes that were happening, and their big changes that were happening in their library spaces. So the Wayward Library at the University of British Columbia did what I think is something brilliant. So their story is that they were in the midst of integrating their circulation and reference services into a single space while also streamlining technology and costs. So from an outside perspective, okay, this may not seem so bad. You're merging two departments, two services. Okay, this happens all the time. But there's also goals compounding the challenge, such as stimulating more efficient research, still having staff help students and faculty continuously as they enter the library space, and also not showing any of the any obstacles that they're facing with this challenge to patrons. They don't want anyone to be able to notice that there's challenges happening. So in order to prepare for this change in a really harmonious manner, the circulation and reference team, they got together and they drafted a strategic plan which promotes the continuous support and creative inspiration for staff, which is what I think to be a potential model for other libraries. So the library committed to providing new learning opportunities for staff and also engaging the entire staff in planning for major organizational challenges. So whenever the library makes a change or undergoes a transformation, it will be up to the team to come together and determine new roles and responsibilities. So I told you I was going to ask maybe some hard-hitting questions that I don't necessarily have the answers to, but I want you to be thinking about how can all staff be incorporated into the drafting of new strategies at libraries? How can this become a collaborative process from the librarians to the data scientists to the people sitting in the reference and circulation desks and so on and so forth? And so when we talk about trends and we talk about challenges, you may have seen a bit of a common thread in a lot of those discussions. And it's that all these trends and all these challenges are about, in many ways, anticipating the needs of the patrons and updating infrastructure, most of the time technological infrastructure, to prepare for them. So when we think about transformations over the next 5+ years in the library space, we think about the tools, the devices, and the technologies. They're going to have a major impact that libraries really need to be watching. So here you'll see the 6 technologies to watch that the expert panel deemed as the potentially most impactful technologies in libraries over the next 5 years. So similar to trends in many ways, the technology topics are placed on 3 time to adoption horizons. There's technologies that are perceived to face mainstream adoption in 1 year or less, 2 to 3 years, and 4 to 5 years. And when I say mainstream adoption, I get the question a lot, well, that's a vague term. What is mainstream adoption? Well, we go by Jeffrey Moore's definition of mainstream adoption, which means 20% or more of libraries globally. So you could be one of those people who says, hey, my library is working with all of these technologies right now, and you may be ahead of the curve. There may be libraries who are just struggling to implement those in the 1 year or less horizon. So that means that there could be 80% of other libraries out there who are facing the same struggles. So this is just to get you thinking about the technologies you need to be talking about in your strategic discussions with staff, with faculty, and everyone in the library. So the first technology we're going to talk about here is electronic publishing, which is affecting many facets of the university as well as the libraries. Now, electronic publishing, in many ways, has already been firmly established, especially in the consumer sector. And we define e-publishing as refining the boundaries between print and digital, still image and video, passive and interactive. And so libraries are now tasked with the challenge of creating modern digital workflows that support any form of content in which that content might appear. Could be video, It could be social media materials. It could be, quizzes that faculty are trying to include in publishing materials, interactive content, a whole spectrum of formats. So e-publishing is also categorized by many libraries. Maybe the more common term used is scholarly communication. So in thinking about some of the things we're going to talk about, you might be thinking about this as scholarly communication improvements and enhancements as well. But what electronic publishing is doing is enabling libraries to produce content either formally through a press or informally through a repository. And so 5-10 years ago, if the first revolution of e-publishing was simply making publishing platforms accessible to people electronically, the next phase we're seeing is linking these platforms together to produce combinations, different types of curations of this content. So new concepts like responsive design and open access are pushing the boundaries of electronic publishing and making it easier, hopefully, for libraries to publish resources that assist and reach more people outside of their buildings. So a great example is actually one that's been around for a few years, and that's the University of Southern California's Vectors Journal. It's a scholarly journal that focuses on how technology shapes, transforms, reconfigures, and even impedes social relations. So it uses a special peer-reviewed format to publish only works that need to exist in multimedia, like video and like those interactive dimensions that we talked about. So given the different states of media that are continuously evolving, I would love everyone to be thinking about and going back to their institutions and discussing how can libraries continue to push the boundaries in what can be made published and what can be made available digitally rather than just full text. I think another critical dimension of this technology is really materialized into a different technology topic, and that's open content. So many discussions about e-publishing and open content these days are going hand in hand. And a movement towards open content or making content freely available or accessible anywhere or open source so that it can be added to even by consumers really represents a shift in the way scholars are conceptualizing education and learning and research to a view that is more about or less about the information that's being conveyed and more about the process of learning. So we already know that information is everywhere, but the challenge now in this kind of post-information age is how do we make effective use of it with this information overload? So open content is using open licensing schemes like those seen through the Creative Commons to encourage not only a sharing of information, but the sharing of experiences, of pedagogies, of best practices between libraries. And part of the appeal here is that it's a response to rising costs of traditionally published resources, and also a lack of resources in some parts of the world, which is still an issue. And so the big ask here, the question itself is quite simple, but the answer is not. What can you do at your library to make your resources more open and make them more engaging and make it easier for people to add to them and grow to them themselves? A great example of this is happening at the Staffordshire University Library. They've created their university online repository, which is really an open access institutional research repository, and research and scholarly input resides in it from the university staff and from the researchers. And so the content there includes everything from peer-reviewed journal articles to conference papers, book chapters, reports, exhibition catalogs, artworks, and even multimedia recordings. And by making this information available to everyone at the university, it sort of becomes one place that people can go to find a plethora of information as it relates to their own research. Finally, in the realm of technologies, a little bit further out in the distance, our expert panel decided that the semantic web and link data is 5+ years away from mainstream adoption. And when reading some of the materials out there on the semantic web and link data, I got to tell you, some of it seemed even a little bit science fiction to me and a little further off. But that doesn't mean these conversations shouldn't be taking place now in libraries. Many libraries that have been working with the semantic web and linked data in a more basic way for years. So just to give you a little context, semantic-aware applications infer the meaning of information on the internet using very specific metadata to make connections and provide answers for searches and research that would otherwise might be elusive or invisible, hard to find. So in libraries, I mentioned, have been working with semantic web and linked data in a basic form for some time by simply using a machine-readable cataloging format. However, what makes this trend new and a little off in the distance is being able to connect the metadata found in library catalog systems with the internet through variations of linked data. So this means semantic searching that can be applied to scientific inquiries to allow researchers to find relevant information without having to deal with apparently similar but relevant information. So if you're searching about, planetary science, you might find something about how you might find a rant about how Pluto isn't a planet, rather than finding information you might need about the lunar phases. So the goal of semantic web and linked data is to make searching for information easier because the results are far more accurate and relevant to what the searcher is needing. So semantic-aware and applications and linked data are really intended to assist with this type of discovery, making social connections, and also even advertising. Some good examples we're seeing this right now are taking place at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. They're using a search engine called Noesis, which is this discipline-specific semantic ontology that matches search terms with relevant results, ensuring, for example, the search on tropical cyclones won't turn up information on the sports team or roller coaster. Another great example I'd like to share is happening internationally. So the German National Library of Science and Technology has what they call their AV portal. So their AV portal provides multimedia retrieval methods for searching within high-grade scientific films, generally from the fields of technology and the natural sciences for now. So what this does is it allows for spoken and written language and video to be automatically recorded and searched directly through digital object identifiers. So, it's one thing to put up a video on YouTube of a scientist talking about a discovery and make that publicly available on the YouTube channel. But imagine what the scientist has said in those words being, in that video, being able to be also searchable. So if he brought up tropical cyclones in a specific dimension of them in his talk, and it's available on video, so simply searching those terms will pull up the video for researchers, which is very exciting. There are a number of other universities and libraries that are capitalizing on this. And also broader initiatives. So I would say Europeana is a really notable example of linked open data. So the vision of Europeana is to make cultural heritage openly accessible online, and through their agreement, they're maintaining an opening licensing framework, which requires contributing data providers and aggregators to provide Europeana the right to publish their works and metadata under a Creative Commons license so that everything remains open. So the scholarly information can be accessed through general search terms, specific categories, and phrases. And you can even refine searches by filtering media type, language, and country. So it really is universally accessible. So if you are interested in any of the projects you've seen here today, or any of the topics we've talked about, if you're one of those people sitting in the audience, like I am sometimes during presentations, thinking to yourself, yeah, but so what? Or I disagree with that. Or why didn't X, Y, and Z topics make it in? Those are really important. Then we have a way for you to hopefully get involved and have your voice heard in our work and in the NMC Horizon project. The first thing that you can do is you can tag any reactions, articles, or things you find with the hashtag NMCHZ on Twitter, which we are constantly monitoring. You can comment on the report on our Facebook page, our NMC Horizon Project Facebook page. Or the two ways that I'd love to get the audience to participate are to either sign up to participate on the expert panel, which means you'll have a hand in deciding the next set of topics that make a report, or by submitting your projects. If you say, hey, one of the projects you talked about today sounds really similar to mine, only mine's further along, or mine, has really grown in the past year. No matter what time of year between reports, we always want to hear about your innovative work. So go.nmc.org/projects is the best way to submit your project. In a few minutes in a form, you could submit your work. And you could also contact me at samantha@nmc.org with any direct questions or about any of these ways to engage. So don't hesitate to jump right in. I'll leave this contact screen up. If you guys want to be submitting any projects or applying for the expert panel in the background. But right now, I think we've had enough out of me. I'd love to open the floor for any questions that you might have.
Nice job, Samantha. So I captured a question in chat and put it in the moderators tab, and I'll try and do that if other questions come in. I may have missed them, but there was one from Peggy.
Great.
She asked, how do you deal with the open sharing of databases when there are data subscriptions like Gala?
Yeah, that is a challenge. I don't know that there's a silver bullet. I think systems like Gala are going to be in place for some time to come. I think it's just about making sure for every Gala out there, there's also a Europeana and databases that are completely open. So, people, in addition to having subscriptions, can also have an open option. So it's about creating new things. It's about creating new databases and working across libraries to come up with brand new frameworks that are completely open.
So please feel free to put a question in the chat. We've got 4 or 5 more minutes before we'll take a break. If I've missed a question, please repost it, or you can raise your virtual hand. It's the third icon over the hand icon, and we'll give you the microphone to ask a question.
Yeah, and while people are thinking of questions, I'm going to type the direct link to the wiki space where the work took place from the expert panel, because I think what's important here is that we talked. There's 18 topics that made the report, and we talked about around half of those today. But there were 60 technologies considered and a number of other trends or challenges that the library professionals discussed that didn't make the report. And I think sometimes it's equally interesting to see what didn't make the report versus what did. It might be a topic that makes a future report, or it might be a topic that you have an expertise in that we can get your thoughts on, in order to keep that moving forward in our research. All right, I see another question here. I think there's another question. Having a little bit of trouble scrolling up, so my apologies.
Yeah, Marianne asked, what skills do you think are most important for high school students to bring to their academic libraries?
Oh, wow. I think that's a great question. So I'm fortunate enough that I get to speak with a corporate training organization on Friday about how trainers can basically prepare for incoming graduates at their companies and jobs. And the thing that I have to say is it's not so much about what students can do, it's mostly about what libraries and companies can do to be prepared. So high school students, this is a generation who has never known a world that they couldn't hold in the palm of their hands through a smartphone, through a tablet. They don't even have to think about Wi-Fi access or internet access because in a lot of countries, it's ubiquitous. They don't give it a second thought. They're the ones training their parents and sometimes even training their teachers on these devices. So I just say it's really important for library professionals to be familiar with these technologies, know how to use them themselves, and be able to work with students to show them, okay, that's great that you were able to download and the latest Angry Birds app and that you are on your Facebook app on your phone. The library professionals need to be able to educate students in how those tools can be used in service of learning and research, and how they can be turned into productivity tools so that they're not seen as distractions. So they're actually part of the learning and part of the information discovery.
So I did skip over a question from Peggy. She had asked, how are schools districts using the data from the Horizon reports to advocate for resources?
great question. I am fortunate enough to travel around to different schools and universities and talk with faculty and administrators about how they're using the report. And the most common answer I get is that they're taking the report into meetings and using the language of the report to help build their cases. So a teacher, for example, was really invested in making sure her class went one-to-one, meaning a device for every student, and took the latest report where there is information about BYOD to their administration, which had best practice examples and which had definitions of BYOD and how it's being used, so that they didn't feel like they had to start from scratch and do their own research. It was already done for them. The way that we build these reports is they're published under a Creative Commons license, not only to be freely available, but so that they can be remixed. So every topic fits across a couple pages, and you can export those pages as a separate PDF or separate report. So if you were interested in 3D printing, you could export the 3D printing section and just print that out and just bring that to your meeting. So we're finding that the report is really becoming an aid in informing strategic planning in those types of meetings.
Samantha, we've also talked about trying to help schools build their own Horizon report. Holly and I had worked on a proposal where we would actually work with the school to identify what their core learning methodologies were, and then to kind of build out how you use the same process from the Horizon report to look at your own kind of trends and how they would impact your own learning philosophy.
Yeah, great. In every edition of the report, we publish our methodology, which is kind of a modified Delphi. And so the process we have for deciding the topics of the report is really a democracy where we're inviting different perspectives and we're putting it to a vote. I think that same strategy can be taken to every school and to every library, that same process, and why not have your librarians, why not have your educators vote on the topics that they want to see implemented in their arenas. And as an addition to that, and the types of things that Steve and Holly are working on, is we have an online learning initiative at the NMC called the NMC Academy. And our goal in the next few years, and I know Holly is vigorously working on this, is to have a set of free online courses for every edition of the Horizon Report to really bring the content alive so that readers can take it from the next phase, from reading and analysis to starting to formulate and develop strategic action plans. So stay tuned with the NMC Academy. I hope that's something that can be accomplished soon. Of course, I'd be remiss not to say we're always looking for funding to help make that happen and for partners who are also interested in this common mission.
Great. Lots of comments in the chat of appreciation, Samantha. Beth said this has been such an excellent presentation, delivered so well. So thank you.
Thank you. We don't, how am I supposed to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee if my ego gets too big for me to float away? But no, thank you for your kind words. And I actually want to express thanks to the audience. It's really because of library professionals and the types of people who are in this audience that are making these trends come to fruition, that are solving these challenges, that are implementing these technologies. I just had the pleasure of synthesizing and writing about them, but you're the ones really doing all the exciting work and transforming the library spaces. So I really have to commend and thank you.
Okay, I'm clapping for you. It's hard to find the applause icon now, but it's under the smiley face. Thanks to Samantha Adams Becker. Thanks to all of you. We do have a short break for you now, 5 to 7 minutes. We have 4 great sessions coming up. Please consider attending one of them. They are listed in your own time zone on the schedule on the library20.com page. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Samantha. Bye now.
Thank you.